You look around and call it your life. But what you are seeing is only the final printout of something that has been running silently inside you, unchecked. A sophisticated printer, no noise, no shaking, no error message. It simply does its job, printing exactly what you have fed into it in the form of repeated thoughts, images, and emotions. This is not new, but perhaps you have forgotten, and because you forgot, it keeps printing unpaid bills, unwanted calls, situations repeating themselves. So often you start to think destiny is playing tricks on you. But no, no one is messing with you. You are just using the same mold. No one ever taught you that what you call reality does not come from the outside. It comes from the draft inside your mind, a draft that has never been edited, never been filtered, only accumulated over the years through what you feared, repeated, and believed to be true. I have seen people torment themselves over broken relationships, careers that never seem to move forward, bodies exhausted for no clear reason. They run from one course to another book, from one doctor to another expert, but very few stop and ask the most basic question. What exactly have I been programming into my life all this time? This question, if you dare sit with it, will take you back to where everything began. Not the day you graduated or the first time you were rejected, but to the invisible place where the first images were planted into your mind like seeds, and you watered them every day with emotions you thought were harmless. Imagine waking up and in the first 2 minutes, you think about how hard today will be, that you do not have enough time, that someone will annoy you again. Then you get dressed, step outside, and what happens? Exactly what you just thought, but you do not notice, because you do not believe something so simple could shape the complex chain of results in your life. In truth, you do not have to believe it. You only have to look back and experiment just for one day. Observe the first thought that appears when you wake up and see what it brings along. You will witness something strange. Your mind does not reflect reality. It sends out a signal and the world responds. But most people live as if the mind is just a passive observer, not the one holding the signal. They blame the universe, blame others, blame themselves, without realizing that the printer is still working exactly according to the command they unconsciously sent. I once sat across from a man who swore he was unlucky, that the universe was somehow against him. When I asked what he thought about every morning before leaving his house, he answered immediately, "I always prepare myself for something bad to happen." And I smiled. Do you see it now? That very answer printed everything. He was not unlucky. He was just a self-destructive prophet inside his own mind. If you are looking at your life and feeling dissatisfied, do not rush to change your job, your partner, your city. First, change the content you are feeding your mind every day, not by forcing, not by faking positivity, but by starting to filter through observation, by refusing to let old images, old habits, old definitions get printed again. They are not wrong, but they are no longer right for you. The world does not begin out there. It begins with the signal you broadcast consistently every hour, every minute. And you can no longer ignore that printer. It is still running. The question is, what will you print next? Have you ever noticed that the thing you fear the most tends to repeat itself, as if life has its own private joke with your fears? You are afraid of being late, and your car breaks down, afraid of being abandoned, and the person disappears right on cue, afraid of not having enough money, and suddenly all the bills come at once, and you call it coincidence? But what if I told you there is no such thing as coincidence? The thing you fear most is not outside of you. It is radiating from you. Just like entering the wrong code, the system still follows the command, even if that was not your intention. Your subconscious works the same way. It is not as intelligent as you think. It does not analyze. It does not argue. It does not say, oh, this is something he does not want, so I will leave it out. No, it only does one thing. It records what you repeat with strong emotion and turns it into reality. That is why fear often has more magnetic power than goals. Because you think about it more, live with it longer, you feel it deeper. And so the subconscious accepts it, not as a warning, but as an instruction. When you imagine the person you love leaving, picture the arguments, feel the loss, the emptiness. You are not just reacting emotionally, you are programming, you are sending a blueprint full of images, sounds, and feelings for the subconscious to begin construction. It is the same when you feel nervous before a meeting, afraid you will say the wrong thing, worried about being judged. And you rehearse the failure again and again, not to prepare, but to sink deeper. Then you walk into the room with a tense heart, a tight mind, and guess what happens? What you feared becomes your behavior. Shaky hands, stumbled words, avoiding eye contact, and all of it confirms your original fear. You say again, see, I was right. But you were not right. You activated it. So why do we continue to live with fear as if it is useful? Maybe because it is familiar. Maybe because society teaches us to stay alert. Maybe because in the past, a certain fear once protected us from getting hurt. But today, the real question is, what is the thing you fear most these days? And how many times are you repeating it each day? In your mind, in your words, in the passing feelings during quiet moments? What signal is that repetition sending? Are you placing an order for a future you do not actually want to live in? The subconscious is not your enemy. It is like a loyal assistant, one that does not argue, does not laugh, only follows the tone of its master. When you use fear as a base for caution, it hears it as affirmation, and it starts gathering experiences that match that frequency, like when you say, I am afraid of being betrayed, and then every small action of the other person is examined through the lens of suspicion. There is no room left for trust, and you unconsciously push that person away. When the relationship ends, you say again, I was right. But what you were right about was not intuition. It was what you unconsciously planted and harvested. We were not taught how to speak to ourselves. We only learned how to speak to others. But what creates our life is not the words we say out loud. It is the words we say inside. When you ask yourself, what if I fail? What if I am not good enough? What if everything falls apart? You are lighting up an emotional map for your subconscious to navigate, and it is loyal to a fault. If you truly understand this, you will begin to be extremely selective with your thoughts, not by suppressing them, but by being aware. Fear does not disappear when you pretend it is not there, but it loses its power when you stop giving it the lead role. Each time you start imagining the worst, ask yourself again, am I stamping approval on a scenario I do not want? You are the one signing that order, and the world is simply delivering exactly what you have authorized. If you do not want that package, do not send it out through constant emotion. The subconscious is listening, and it does not know how to joke. What causes many people to overlook this law is not that it is too complex, but that it is too quiet. There is no bell to alert you. No instruction manual. No one standing beside you each morning to remind you that the thought you just repeated will begin a chain reaction. This law does not need your belief to function. Just like gravity does not wait for your approval to pull you to the ground. It only needs your carelessness. And that is what most people are still doing. They let their minds drift freely, repeating thousands of unintentional thoughts, most of which come from anxiety, old memories, and defensive reflexes. These thoughts are like trails that grow deeper the more you walk them. And the subconscious, loyal like a machine, incapable of resistance, receives every repeated thought as a design instruction for the next version of your reality. When you think something once, it is just an idea. But when you think it with emotion, over and over, it becomes a dominant circuit. It does not have to be true. It only needs to feel true to you. And that very emotion is what makes this law function, like electricity flowing through the most hidden system in your mind. People often think this law is some form of ancient magic, a secret knowledge to be found in a hidden monastery on a mountain. The truth is, it is everywhere. In the lyrics of a song you hum mindlessly, in the sentence you joke about with friends, in the look you give each time things do not go your way. These seemingly harmless signals are becoming data, and this law simply processes the data you send in without bias, without opinion, without justification. If you send the signal that people always take advantage of you, you will encounter more situations that confirm it, not because you are wrong, but because you are broadcasting on that exact frequency. If you always feel unlucky, you will start to miss even the smallest opportunities because your mind has already labeled it as failure before you act. This law does not punish you. It does not care about morality or intentions. It only responds precisely to the state you maintain. That is why truly positive people are not naive, but aware of what is being printed into their lives every hour, and they actively choose their thoughts. People who understand this law are not always cheerful, but they are awake. They know every repeated emotion is information, and they are careful with what they absorb, not by avoiding, but by organizing. When a negative feeling shows up, they do not judge it, nor do they bury it with fake slogans. They observe, acknowledge, then choose to replace it with a deliberate signal, because they know the system is recording everything, and over time, the recording becomes the background music of their entire life. You do not have to believe in the mystical. You only need to observe how everything in nature works. Seeds grow according to their kind. Water flows in the direction of the land's slope. Sound echoes based on the shape of the structure. And thoughts, if repeated with emotion, will shape reality, not through magic, but through the alignment between energy and manifestation. You think of an image, you feel it to be real, and then the world begins to build a scene that matches the belief you are holding. This law does not shout. It does not threaten. It just does its job. So if your life keeps replaying the same tune from the past, maybe it is not because the universe is silent, but because you have not changed the song, and the speaker is still playing the old recording as if no one has ever walked in and turned it off. What shapes your life is not what you say during interviews, but the scenes you silently replay in your mind when no one is watching, the fleeting, fragmented images without narration, without direction, yet shown so many times that your brain begins to believe they are real. And then the subconscious receives the order to begin construction. No need for a colored blueprint. No need for explanation. As long as you keep replaying the same scene with real emotion, the system will start to lay the foundation. What few people realize is that imagination is not just for creativity or escape. It is the most powerful tool for designing reality you have ever possessed, even if you are unaware that you are using it. Imagination is not harmless. It is the most subtle signal your subconscious uses to determine what you truly want, regardless of what you say out loud. When you imagine being rejected, failing, ending up in the worst case scenario, and you feel anxiety, disappointment, a sharp pain in your stomach, it is no longer just imagination. It is instruction. It is a sample scene. And if you replay it long enough, with enough intensity, your life will align itself to that image. This is why many people often feel like they predicted the bad things that happened to them. They did not predict. They staged the scene, and when that scene arrived, they called it intuition. But in truth, it was simply a perfect replica of an image engraved deep within. Some people use imagination as a fortress. They construct worst-case scenarios to avoid disappointment. They repeat failure to avoid being surprised. They believe doing this is being realistic. But the reality they create does not come from the world, that it comes from the replicas they have played in their minds hundreds of times. On the other hand, there are people who use imagination like a directional transmitter. They visualize themselves succeeding, not to fantasize, but to establish a reference pattern. They feel it as if it is happening, and the body begins to respond as if it is real. They stand taller, speak more clearly, make different decisions, and results gradually change, not because they are luckier, but because they live within a different mental pattern created by their inner images. The subconscious does not respond to what you wish for. It responds to what you replay. No words are needed. Only enough repetition and strong enough emotion, like a printer receiving files from a design you never intended to share, but left in the default folder, and because you open it every day, the system assumes that is the master file. What you need to understand is that everything you have ever achieved, lost, kept, or failed to keep began with an image, a mental scene tinted with a specific emotional color, and those scenes are not random. They are the products of old beliefs, deep memories, and well-worn habits. If you have not reviewed them, there is a high chance you are still building a movie that no longer fits you. And old scenes always lead to old endings. You do not need to rewrite your life through effort. You only need to change the root scene, choose a new image, hold it long enough, let the body believe, let emotion connect, and let the subconscious receive a new instruction. No one can live differently if their mind still broadcasts the same scene. They can try, change their environment, search for new opportunities, but sooner or later, reality will bend itself back to match the old framework already drawn. To live a new life, you need a new image, not to hope, but to direct, not to pretend positivity, but to consciously design, because whether you realize it or not, the system is still producing the film, and the true director is always the one who reviews the original imagined scenes. Everything you are living is not a sentence. It is an edit. And the irony is, you are the one who edited it. Only you forgot who you were in the whole process. Not a victim, not a supporting role, but a director who has lost the original script. Many people step into life as if they were forced to play a role they never chose. They look around and see a job they do not love, relationships they do not understand, decisions they are not sure why they made, and they conclude it must be fate. But no one lives according to fate. If they never signed their agreement, what happened was not coercion, it was programming. Your mind once recorded an image, a belief, an early experience, then repeated it so many times that your every reaction became automatic. When you face something similar, you do not respond from the present. You respond from the past. You bring the old lens, the old pattern, the old fear. And in doing so, you react as if you have no choice, as if life is imposing itself upon you. But in truth, Life is only replaying the tape you broadcast, and you are still the one who holds the power to stop it. What you call personality is really just a programming style that has settled. What you call destiny is really just a storyline you keep repeating with an emotional frequency strong enough to turn it into reality. No one else wrote the script for you. You have simply lived too long inside drafts that were never revised, and now you believe you are locked into a fixed role. But a true director is never bound by the old roles. They only need to remember that everything on this stage can be rewritten if you dare to touch the page. Change does not have to begin by tearing everything down. It begins by consciously recognizing which parts you are performing out of habit and which parts you want to recreate by choice. If your life feels boring, dull, it is not because the world is too small, but because you are unconsciously repeating scenes. An old edit is playing, and you do not remember when you gave it permission. But you can still walk into the editing room, you can still cut scenes, you can still rewrite dialogue, you can still choose a different angle, a different rhythm, a new storyline. No one is stopping you. No one is holding you back, except yourself, if you continue to believe that things must stay the way they are. And this is where freedom begins. Not external freedom, but freedom of thought. When you stop chasing the need to fix everything out there and begin to adjust the lens placed on your own shoulder. When you stop blaming other characters in the film and begin to look at how you wrote them into the story. You may not be responsible for who gave you the first script, but you are responsible for continuing to perform it without revision. And that is a power no one can take.